Let's do some math. So this video is going to be about more trigonometry, and in particular, we're going to solve for side lengths of a triangle using trigonometry. To be able to do this, we actually need to be able to type these things into our calculator. We need to be we need to be able to estimate a certain trig function at a specific known angle. So the directions say to estimate the trig value of a known angle using a calculator or a trig table. Let's check out a trig table for a second. These are wonderfully archaic things a little bit. So before calculators could handle trigonometry, these used to be the way that trigonometry was done. And so nowadays, a calculator is able to hold all of those values. But for example, if you're doing sine of 27, let me get a highlighter here. So if you're doing sine of 27, what you used to have to do is go to your trig table, find the value. Here's the A for angle value of 27 right there. And then sine happens to be the first, column. And so this first column here, sine of 27, would be 0.4540. And notice you could do this for any angle value. Say you wanted the angle value of 81. That would be right here, and you could go up and you could find the tangent of 81. Well, that'd be something like 6.3138. Okay, and so these trig values are actually stored in your calculator nowadays. They can estimate some of it. But you used to be able to go to a trig table and figure out these values. So let's see, 0.4540. Let's go back up here and see if our calculator gives us the same value. Let me push draw. Point. And 0.4540. Now the calculator I'm going to use is the scientific calculator at Desmos.com. So you can see that right here, scientific calculator at Desmos.com. You can use any calculator that has trig functions, but what you would do in Desmos is you'd go to functions. You'd click sine right here. Okay, so there's sine. I clicked function, sine. You want to make sure you're on degrees, DEG. And then you go back to the main and you type in 27. And when you do that, you get 45, and if you round that 399 up, 4540. Incredible, we got the same thing in our calculator as we would on the trig table. Okay, let's try cosine of 48. So let's go back to the function. Let's find cosine. Back here of 48, cosine of 48 is going to be 6691 if we round to 4 decimal spots, so 0.6691. And finally, let me bring that calculator back up. Now we're going to do tangent of 89. So tangent of the degree measure, 89 degrees, is 57.289. Let's see, 57.2890 if you round up. Oops, I guess I'd have to round a couple of these up. We'll just not round up. It's easier. 2899. Okay, so again, make sure you can do this in a calculator before we start anything else today. If you're having trouble doing this in a calculator, you need to ask a teacher, log into one of the video calls if you're doing this online, or ask a teacher about where to push these buttons on the calculator. And here's why. We're going to be doing this all day, which is solving for certain side lengths using trigonometry. So we're going to use trigonometric ratios to solve for x. So what the directions say, and then round. Notice we're given one angle here. We're given one side length, and we're given one side length to solve for. That's when you can use trigonometry. You need three things. You need an angle and one of two side lengths. And the reason being, let's go ahead and label, starting at this angle here, angle 36. Hypotenuse is always across from the right angle. Adjacent is always the other side of the angle. Hypotenuse and adjacent are the two sides. And so across is opposite. So step one, we're going to label. If you're kind of a step person, you can write that. Label from your angle. Step two, decide which trig function you're going to use. Okay, decide about your trig function. So in this case, I'm going to do this in a different color because I think that'll be easiest for us to see. Opposite has a number and hypotenuse has a variable. Adjacent doesn't have anything. It doesn't have a variable or a number, so we're actually not going to use adjacent. And that means we're going to use hypotenuse and opposite. And so which of our trig functions, SOHCAHTOA, uses opposite and hypotenuse? Well, that's sine. So remember, we always type in sine of an angle equals opposite over hypotenuse. We can fill in all of those blanks if we use sine. If we use cosine, we can't fill in the blank for adjacent, so we wouldn't want to use that one. So let me go ahead and fill in these blanks. Sine of the angle is 36 degrees. Opposite is 20. Hypotenuse, well, we don't know. We'll call that x. And this is an equation. We've set up an equation. Okay, so third step, solve equation. Now, if you're going to solve a trig function, I highly suggest that you cross multiply. Because you see, both sides are just fractions if you put sine of 36 over 1. Sine of 36 times x. Let me switch colors so again we can see it well. Sine of 36 times x, if you cross multiply, you would write sine of 36. That's one thing. You keep it together in parentheses because you're about to type it in your calculator. Times x equals 20 times 1, so just 20. To get x by itself, you need to divide both sides by sine of 36. Those cancel, you're left with just x. Divide this side by sine of 36. And now that's a calculator problem. So I'm going to go to my calculator and I'm going to say, let's see, fraction 20. Go to the bottom of the fraction. Let me go to function sine of, back to main, 36. So notice 20 divided by sine of 36. I get 34.02. It's said to round to the nearest tenth, so 34.0. 34.0. Now, last thing I like to do is just go and make sure this makes sense. If this side's 20, does it make sense that this side, the hypotenuse, is longer, about 34? Sure does. Let's look at one more example. Let's follow each step. So step 1, label. Here's my angle, 55. I'm going to label hypotenuse. I'm going to label adjacent. And I'm going to label across from the 55, opposite. Decide which one you need. The way I like to decide a lot of times is just figure out which of the sides you don't need. We don't need hypotenuse in this example. The opposite has an x next to it. The adjacent has a 33 next to it. We're going to use opposite and adjacent. Which trig function uses opposite and adjacent? Tangent. So we're going to say tangent of our angle, 55, equals opposite, x, over adjacent, 33. Now at this point, we solve. So to solve, I'm going to make this side a fraction, just like the other side, divided by 1. I'll say x times 1 is x. 33 times tangent of 55 is 33 times tangent of 55. Make sure to keep that trig ratio with this angle in parentheses because it is going to be separate. You're going to plug that part into your calculator. Now at this step, again, this is just a calculator. Calculator skill, so let's open it up. We need to do 33. Oops, I need to X out of that. 33 times tangent of 55. And I get 47.128. 47.128. And I guess we need to round to the nearest tenth, so just 47.1. Last thing I like to do is just, does this make sense? Is that side going to be larger than the 33? Yeah, I think that makes sense if it would be 47.1. All right, let's check out another example. In these examples, it says solve the triangle. This is actually just like the examples above, except it's asking us to do more. It's asking us to solve for everything in the triangle, all three sides and all three angles. Now, let's label what we have and what we need. Okay, what we need is every side of the triangle. We need AB, we need BC, and we need AC. We have one of those. We actually have BC right here already. It's 9. What else do we need? We need to find the measure of angle A, the measure of angle B. Well, actually, we know the measure of angle B. It's 90. And we need to find the measure of angle C. Well, we know that one. It's 61. And we should know that the three angles in a triangle all add up to 180. So if I do 180 minus 90 minus 61 more, I should get 29. So my measure of angle A is 29. The angles should potentially be the easy part of this, okay? It depends if you like solving for triangle angles, I guess, but subtracting, you're usually given two of them, so if subtracting from 180, usually not too bad. For the other two parts, you're gonna have to use trig. And I'm gonna go ahead and set up both equations. So let me solve for AB first. So that's a C, that's C value up here. And then I'll set up an equation for the B value here, AC. So AB, then AC. Either way, I'm going to start at the angle I'm given, 61. And I'm going to label all the sides. Hypotenuse, adjacent next to it, opposite across from it. Then I'm going to use my SOHCAHTOA to decide how do I set up some equations. So if I'm going to set up an equation that has the side I know and this side up here that I want to solve for, I'm going to have to use adjacent and opposite. So to do that, adjacent and opposite is tangent. So I'm going to say, I'll do it over here, tangent of my angle, 61, is opposite over adjacent. We don't know the opposite, so we put that C there. And now we can cross multiply and solve. C times 1 is C. 9 times tangent of 61. Well, I don't know what that is, but I can type it into my calculator. So 9 times, go to the function value here, tangent, back to main, of 61. Looks like it's going to be 16. Uh-oh, what did I say? 16.236. So I'll go ahead and write that in there as AB, 16.236. Now let me switch colors so I can do this in one different color. Now I need to solve for, I only have one highlighter here. Now I need to solve for my hypotenuse, B. I still want to use what I was originally given. Whoa, that's ugly. That kind of covers that up. I still want to use this 9 that I was originally given. Right here. So adjacent and hypotenuse is now what I want to use. And adjacent and hypotenuse is cosine. So I'm going to say cosine of my angle 61 is adjacent, 9, over hypotenuse. Well, we don't know what that is, B. When we cross multiply, we get 9 times 1 is 9. Cosine of 61 times B is, well, it's just cosine of 61 times B. To get B by itself, we need to divide by cosine of 61 on either side. So I divide by cosine of 61. And let me type that into my Desmos scientific calculator. Okay, I'm going to type in 9 divided by function cosine of 61. And I end up getting 18.56. Okay, so that B value is 18.56. Now I'm just going to take a look at these. Does it make sense that the hypotenuse here is the longest side, 18? Yeah. Does it make sense that AB is 16 and BC would be 9? Yeah, that makes sense too. So my answers seem to make sense. And notice, to solve this triangle, I have solved for all three sides. All right, if you have extra questions on how to solve for a triangle, remember our steps. You can always label from the angle given. Once you've labeled, decide what trig function you need. And once you've done that, you need to solve. I usually solve by making both sides fractions and cross multiplying. If you need more help, reach out to us. Ask questions. Good luck.